This video brought to you in part by Tommy and the Order of Cosmic Champions. This exciting and heartwarming coming-of-age Gen X novel is available now. Check the link for more info. Hey there, welcome back to Gen X Grown Up. I am John and I am a Gen X Grown Up. Thank you so much for the click. The guest I'm about to bring on needs no introduction for my audience, but I'm going to do an introduction because how many times in my life can I say I introduced this man to you? I'm talking about the author of so many classic Atari 2600 titles like Yars Revenge, E.T., Saboteur, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and also the author of Once Upon Atari, How I Made History, Killing an Industry. So please join me in welcoming to Gen X Grown Up, Howard Scott Warshaw. Howard, hi and welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
John, thanks for having me. It's really great to be here.
When I let our viewers and followers know that I was going to have a chance to interview you, you graciously offered it up. You said, hey, would you like to look for a time? And I was very thankful for that. So I'd mentioned that on a video and I said, hey, if you have questions you'd like me to try to fit in, there were a few questions that I've sprinkled in here, but by and large, the main thing people said was there was an outpouring of love for you and your work and how much it has touched people over the years, especially people in our generation, Generation Xers, who grew up on your work. And I have said a couple of times that in no small way, you're kind of an architect of some of the best parts of my childhood because your work was directly connected to that. How does it feel to all these years later still have a job that I know that you got a lot of satisfaction out of at the time to still be getting attaboys from that?
Well, John, it means everything. It means everything to me. It really touches me very deeply to know. Honestly, when I was making these games, one of the things that was foremost in my mind was I remember the angst and the boredom and the difficult stuff that I went through as a teen. And I didn't like that at all. And I realized that if I had had video games when I was a teen, it probably would have eased the journey quite a bit. It would have made a big difference to me. And so while I was making these games, the idea that I'm easing that pain for other people, that I'm giving them a break from what may be a very unpleasant experience at times, that was very important to me. That meant a lot. And to hear that's the case, that I did become a part of other people's journey, that I was a positive part of their childhood. That's huge. That's still huge for me. One of the reasons, it took me a long time to get around to the idea of writing a book. And I mean, I've written a number of books before, but people for decades have been saying, Howard, when are you going to write the Atari book? When are you going to do the Atari book? People always wanted to hear about it. I wasn't ready. It wasn't really time. And I had to wait till I had really fully processed the experience and gotten through everything. And so, there's my Once Upon Atari, How I Made History by Killing an Industry.
Mine.
Hey, there's one. And the thing is that I think this book is actually a love letter to the video game industry and to pioneering a new medium and to life-changing experience, because that's what Atari was for me. It was absolutely a life-changing experience. It's still reverberating in my life. I am still learning and growing from the lessons that I obtained at Atari. I'm still learning how to unravel them. And so far people seem to be really enjoying it. And that's just the idea that I can recall these experiences for people and bring back positive parts of their early years and their early experience. It really does mean a lot to me.
We're just meeting and speaking for the first time, but having read your book, this is a stream of consciousness book, which I love about it. This is like a peek inside HSW's mind for me. It's full of puns. Oh, you can turn a pun. Oh, just delicious. Turn a phrase. You remind me of so many of my friends growing up. And so I guess it kind of makes sense. The things you would create would resonate with people who have similar sensibilities, right?
Absolutely.
And, there's so much in there that I read that makes me feel like, damn, I'm mad that I missed out on that. I wish I had worked at Atari during the heyday when you were. It was a great time to be there. It seemed to me when I was reading and learning is that certainly during the good times at Atari, you were the golden boy. Like you got all the they pulled you in for the big projects, and you were on huge projects, and flying on the jet and going to meet Spielberg and that kind of stuff. Was there a time when you pitched a game that just fell flat and never happened, or was you just kind of go from good project to good project during your time there?
I went pretty much from, my first game, Yars Revenge, was originally supposed to be Star Castle, so I didn't pitch that one. What I did was threw it out. It was like, they brought me in to do that game, and the first thing I told them was that game's going to suck, and I don't want my first game to suck. So I created an alternate game. Raiders and E.T., it was just a question of Spielberg wanting me to do it. Well, Raiders was a question of Spielberg wanting me to do it. And I talk in the book about the interview process that I had with Spielberg, which was kind of an amusing one the first time. The second one, Spielberg wanted me to do E.T., but the truth is no one else in the world was even going to bother to attempt to do E.T. So the fact that I was even willing to try guaranteed me the spot doing E.T. And I was so burnt out after finishing E.T. on top of Raiders, that it took me a while to really come back. But I didn't really pitch another game. I was at a place where I could just make a game. They said, Howard, just, make a game, give us a game, and whatever it was, that would be okay. And Saboteur was the next game that I really got together, but it took a while to get to that.
So when you finally left, you and Atari parted ways, there was a crumbling going on at the time, and there was a lot of chaos happening. One of our viewers asked if I would check with you. Did you, I think the statute of limitations is up, did you pilfer any really good swag out of Atari that you still treasure today? I mean, I think back to places I worked, and I got they closed down and I got the door knocker or something. Anything from Atari that you really kind of kept as a keepsake or memento?
I got to say, that's really a great question. The only thing I really took, and I'm not sure if it was even Atari's. I mean, I took a couple of point of purchase advertising things. I took a can of Yars Revenge fly spray that they did some marketing promo things. Those were kind of cool. I didn't really try to pull a lot of stuff. The thing I took home from Atari was one of the most incredible and remarkable experiences of my life. And that filled my box, walking out of the company. It was the things that I took weren't really the objects. I still have an Atari mug that I got at Atari that used to sit on my desk there, sits on my desk now. I always have just kept that with me. But the thing I took from Atari was just an incredible experience, just an unbelievable work experience, something that seems like it could never be equaled. And it would be ridiculous for anybody to try, because it was a product of crazy times and outrageous circumstances. And it all happened to come together, and I was in the right place at the right time, and I happened to be the right person.
You were lightning in the bottle, and you were the lightning. Yeah, that's magical. The thing that got us initially talking was that I'd heard rumor through some news source that, yeah, there's this Yars Revenge Recharge. Yeah, there's this Yars Revenge Reloaded. Yeah, there's this Yars Revenge blah, blah, blah. But the original architect of the original Yars Revenge, often lauded as the best and the game that holds up the best for everyone on the original VCS, is getting a real sequel by you. So I know you've said that's true. Before I ask you anything about it, I want to know, what's it like to come back full circle with Atari after 40 some years, doing a sequel to a game that you thought probably was in the rearview mirror forever?
Full circle is an interesting concept to me, right? Because in some ways, the video game world has come full circle in the sense that, games started as one screen, little time killers, and they grew and grew, and console games got bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where, one person could do a game when I was doing games. That was so quickly not the possible case, and it was just impossible. They got too big. They got huge. They got better. They got more engaging. They got more involved, but they got huge. And the idea of a one-screen game, no one would buy a one-screen game for a console, after a little while. But what happened was the advent of handheld gaming platforms and things like that renewed the idea, and apps particularly renewed the idea that one or a very small number of people could actually put together a new game, an innovative game, a simple gameplay, and put it out to the world. So in that sense, as it grew and grew and grew, it looped back. There was a part that looped back to the origin of the simple one-screen play that just keeps you going and going and going. And that was cool to see that happen. In a similar way, I came full circle, right? Going from being a game maker to a therapist. Because as a game maker, I used to entertain nerds. And then I went on my journey for decades of doing all kinds of other things. And now as a therapist, I've come back and I do work with people around games and gaming and game developers. And I think that I used to entertain nerds, and now I actually make their lives better. So I've come full circle in that way. The idea of coming full circle now with Atari is really interesting, because Atari kind of crashed and burned and became just a library of rights for many years. And now some people actually got together, bought the Atari rights, created an Atari company, and they really want to reestablish Atari as a creative force. And so they came to me and we talked about it. And for many years, people said, hey, would you update ET? Would you redo ET? Would you do something like that? I don't want to redo ET. I have no interest in redoing ET. But what I would like to do is participate in reestablishing Atari as a creative force. And so you have seen several other, there's Yars, Recharge, like you said, Yars Reimagine, all these different Yars something. The only Yars I was involved with was Yars Revenge. Okay, having made the game and putting that together. So, but I've had a design that I've been sitting on for many years that was a true Yars sequel. So you're seeing some of these other Yars spin-offs. I haven't been involved in any of them. But for the first time, I am going to get together with Atari and make a Yars Revenge sequel that's going to expand the story. Yars Revenge was the first product that had a backstory. It was the first video game with a backstory and an auxiliary product. I'm expanding on that story in a huge way. And there may be, there's a thing that I've conceived called the Yarniverse, right? Which is the true full world. And you're going to see another piece of it in the sequel to Yars that should be coming up next year. And beyond that, there is a whole Yarniverse. There is a whole world that ties Yars Revenge, the sequel, Saboteur, the actual true story, not the fake storyline that's out there already that I contributed to writing, but the actual secret backstory behind Saboteur and several other things that all congeal to create this huge world that explains what really is the relationship between Yars and human beings, which is an interesting question to explore. And all of that is the first step towards that big Yarniverse is going to be this next sequel that I'm currently developing with. I'm working with Digital Eclipse as the developers, the people who did the Atari 50 product, which I notice you have a shirt dedicated to it.
I do, and, no question.
and we're together. We're going to work and put this game together for Atari, and I think it's going to be exciting. For people who like Yars Revenge, if you enjoyed Yars Revenge, this is going to be yarier than what you've ever experienced before.
So you kind of already touched on this. One thing I was going to ask you was, we had some viewers saying, is Yars 2 going to be an arcade game where I'm seeking high scores, or is it going to be more story driven like modern games, or is it somewhere in between based on kind of where you come from and where you are now?
Yars 2, I mean, it's certainly story based, but Yars 2 is a two-person competitive game. This is not going to be a one-player how high is up. It'll have single-player modes. Single-player modes will be available. There'll be ways to practice, play with it, grow with it. But the main way you play Yars 2 is against an opponent. Because I'll tell you this, that the basic concept of this sequel is, Yars have to go fight code tiles, right? And to do that, you have to have a skill set. You have to really practice and hone your skill set. And you have to have a way of finding out who are the great Yarian warriors. That's what it's going to be. And what this game is this is about a training ground for Yars. This is where Yars learn the skills they need to go and fight Kotiles. So that's what this is about. And it's a training arena for Yars where you compete against other Yarian contenders to see who is going to be the Yarian champion.
To go and fight the Kotile, ultimately.
Exactly.
Wow. So this is Yars Academy, right? This is where all the best of the best come to find out who actually has what it takes to go out and defend the planet.
That's incredibly intuitive because that's actually the working title.
Is it Yars Academy? I was going to ask you about a title. I wouldn't know if you would tell me, but the way you described it, that just felt naturally where you were going,
I'm glad it works that way. I really am.
Yeah. Now, this next question, I have to ask carefully. I don't think you would spoil it. I know you wouldn't. I don't want to know how or when or where, but will Yars 2, aka Yars Academy, maybe, will it have any Easter eggs?
Oh, it'll have a series of Easter eggs. I have a style of Easter eggs that I put in my games that for every game that I do, you're going to be able to find an HSW with a number. And that number is going to be the number of the game that I'm doing. So in this case, it'll be HSW 5.
Ooh.
It has the characters of all my previous games. Right. So this game will have a Yar. Well, there'll be Yars all over the place, but there'll be a secret Yar you can find somewhere. There should be an Indiana Jones character somewhere.
Excellent.
There should be an E.T. character somewhere. There should be a Hotot, the main character of Saboteur somewhere.
Right.
And there'll be at least one or two others. I mean, there's going to be a host.
Excellent.
Of Easter eggs to find and special signatures and secrets in there. That's part of what makes it an HSW production.
One of the things I learned for the first time reading your book was you'd mentioned, hey, Yars had this peripheral collateral material, had a comic book along with the instructions, and there was actually Easter egg clues hidden in the instructions. There's Easter eggs in the book about how to find the Easter eggs. Is Yars 2 going to have a physical release? And if so, or if not, either way, is there any collateral material? Will we see a continuation of the comic book or anything like that? Do you have anything planned, or can you tell me?
That's not clear at this point. There will be more backstory. How we're going to develop that and how we're going to disseminate that is yet to be planned. But I have, like I said, I've been working on the story of the Yarniverse, the story at large, and we'll take a small portion of that larger story and definitely package it with the game in some form or another. Maybe even there'll be some storytelling elements in the middle of the game.
No. Okay. Now, you'd mentioned about, one of the things in your book about how you move from careers. You had this amazing career in Atari that can never be replicated. You bounced around a bit, and then you found a new calling in therapy related to games somehow. How did you make that migration into therapy? Can you expand on that just a little?
Well, therapy was something I always wanted to do. A lot of people ask me, how do you go from being a programmer to a therapist? It doesn't make a lot of sense to people. And when people say to me, I don't get it, how do you go from that to that? What I really hear them saying is, programmers don't really have a lot of people skills. So what makes you think you're going to be able to be a therapist? You kind of need people skills for that. And that's true. But I was not a typical programmer, just like I'm not really a typical therapist. I do pretty much everything atypically. I think that's just sort of who I am. But to me, programming and therapy are actually very similar. If you really think about it, programmers and therapists were all systems analysts, right? It's just that I've moved on to a much more sophisticated hardware in the human brain. That's the way I look at it.
One more thing that you mentioned about the book, which, by the way, I mentioned before, it's a lot of fun to read. It's a chance. Not everybody gets a chance to sit and speak with Howard Scott Warshaw. If you want to feel like you got a chance to sit and speak with him, the book is great. You mentioned something to me before we started recording. You have some news about the book coming up that's pretty exciting too.
That's true. Actually, I'm working on an Audible version that's going to be done very soon. And I'm reading it myself because I didn't feel it was appropriate for anyone else to deliver this book. A memoir, when I listen to books myself, I tend to go for walks and I listen to books while I walk. I don't read that often, but I listen a lot. And so I'm sympathetic. And I know I like to listen to memoirs. I like to listen to memoirs of other people. And when it's not read by the author, it bugs me. Because I think, what is it? I know I'm going to get more out of a memoir if I'm hearing it from the person whose experience is being discussed. And I wanted to make sure I put that through. That, and also, as you pointed out earlier, I like to play with language a lot.
Yeah.
And I like to try and make it as interesting. So I want the experience of hearing the words to be just as interesting as the words and the concepts themselves. I don't know if I always achieve it, but I'm definitely striving for it. And so I would not trust, because I tweak and play with language and pacing and timing as much as I do, I wouldn't necessarily trust someone else to be able to pick that up unless I was sitting there running through it with them step by step all the way. And then if I'm going to do that, I might as well just read it myself. So I am reading it myself.
And so we're going to get it in Howard Scott Warshaw's dulcet tones. I'm on board. I'm a buyer. Sounds good.
Well, thank you. I'm a seller. We should get together.
That's a match made in heaven. That's going to work wonderfully. Howard, I want to thank you again so much for taking the time to sit down with me and talk about this. We're all very excited about Yars 2. I'm excited about the audiobook coming and the opportunity to speak with you. I can't let you go without getting a Yars Truly. I know that is your signature sign off when you're talking to someone. So if there's anything else you would like to say to my audience before you go, I'm just going to give you the floor.
What I would say is, dear John and Jonettes, I would like to say that it has been a pleasure to be able to share with you and talk with you. I hope you've enjoyed hearing this as much as I've enjoyed putting it out. It really has been great to be here. It's great to let you know that if you want an autographed copy of the book or my Once Upon Atari DVD, you can go to onceuponatari.com and you can order it there. Or you can find the book on Amazon. Soon you'll be able to find the book on Audible. And it's just, I so appreciate the opportunity to be here, John. I've always respected your work. And so I would respect your audience as well, because if they're listening to you, I know they're discriminating shoppers in their audio. And that's what I'm looking for. So I just want to sign off with a lot of gratitude, a lot of appreciation. Yars truly, Howard Scott Warshaw.